Calling dibs is the American English term, also known as bags in the Australia and New Zealand, and as bagsies in UK and Ireland, for an informal convention where one declares a first claim to something to which no one else has a clearly recognised right. Calling dibs, or bagsies, is only possible when the caller wants the responsibility of the object. It is important to note that it is possible to undibs, if the caller wants to. Such a declaration is often recognized in certain cultures, or subcultures, as a means to avoid arguments over relatively trivial issues, although can be considered quite rude at some points. You are not allowed to call dibs on something which is owned by you, or coming out through you. In this case, the person who sees the object first is entitled to call dibs and hence claim it as his/her own. The term bags in much of the English world outside of the US comes from the schoolyard practice of placing one's bag on a chair, bench or other location, thus reserving the seat for you or your group of friends. Usage and equivalent words: in Albania, izura. In Argentina and Uruguay, the phrase canto copyright pry, first one to ask for it, is used with this meaning by children. In Australia, bags, shotgun, and more recently, Jenga, are used. In Austria, the word Gescha 1/4 TZT is used, meaning protected, or kept. Especially in Western Austria, the word mines is also used. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, kids either say pick moj, or pick prvi. Pick moj would mean, I pick it to be mine, whereas pick prvi would translate to, I pick it to use it as the first. It is not clear where the verb pick comes from, since it does not seem to be of Slavic origin. Most probably the word stems from the German verb piken, which means to stab, pierce or jab. In Boston, Chicago and Pittsburgh, dibs also refers to the practice of holding a shoveled-out parking space after a heavy snowfall by putting chairs, laundry baskets, or other items in the street to mark the claimed space. In Brazil, the words primeiro meu and minor are used in the same way. In Colombia, the equivalent for dibs would be me lo pido, which means I ask for it. In Czech Republic, the equivalent for dibs would be prvna, which means first. In Denmark, the equivalent for dibs is hell, which means refuge. Shotgun and dibs are also used. In Finland, the equivalent is apus followed by the claimed object, for example apasi tupenki. To claim the front seat. Dibs and shotgun are also used. In Flanders, there is no direct translation, but pot or shotgun are mostly used in the same way. Dibs is gaining popularity, especially among young people. In European Francophonie, the word prems, or prums is commonly used for that. One might say des to claim second on something, if someone has already claimed prums. Conversely, some people used to say der. In Germany, the equivalent for dibs is erster, or mines. In Greece, the word I permil, the first syllable of the word I, is used. In Guatemala, the equivalent for dibs is primas, or voy primas, which means I go first in colloquial language. In Hungary, equivalents for dibs are stipistop, stip stop, and stipistopli. They come from the English word stop. In Iceland, the equivalent for dibs is pant, short for a permel g panta, or I order in English. However, the word dibs is used frequently in common speech, especially among young men. In Indonesia, Singapore and Malaysia, the equivalent for dibs is chup, chop, or simply shup in the country's respective and formal Malayo language. The word corresponds to the act of stamping or branding something. In calling shup, one stakes claim by attempting to be the first to stamp one's name on the object. In Iran, the equivalent for dibs is aval. In Ireland, bagsy is normally used. In Israel, both dibs and shotgun are used as in American English. The Hebrew words kky and ka in registered trademark, and the phrase unregistered trademark y are also used to call dibs, mostly by children. In Italy, the equivalent for dibs is mio, or primo, meaning mine, and first, respectively. Conversely, ultimo. In Kosovo, the equivalent for dibs is mozi prek, uck, used after the war, meaning I have first claimed it and I am the toughest. It referred to capturing property and possibly livestock of ethnically cleansed Kosovo Serbs, Roma and other non-Albanians, who were forced to leave once NATO stepped in and UCK was able to finally exercise their toughness on civilians and Christian churches and medieval monuments. In South Korea, the equivalent for dibs is I degree A, meaning I got that. In Mexico, the word pido, or pmis is commonly used by children. In Nepal, the equivalent for dibs is mero, or mine in English. Short for tu mero ho, or this is mine in English. This is commonly used among young people. In Netherlands the equivalent for dibs is buurt. The word dibs is gaining popularity over buurt in the Netherlands due to the large number of people watching American TV shows. In New Zealand the equivalent for dibs is a noose, which is yelled whilst clutching one's ear. In Norway the equivalent for dibs is fuss, which means first. Sometimes the word fright, meaning free, is also used in a situation where you want to claim something. Dibs is also used. In Peru the equivalent for dibs is upme. The first one to ask for it, and is used by children. In Poland, the equivalent for dibs is rezauja unregistered trademark, zaklepuja unregistered trademark / zaklepane, or zamoyam, which means I reserve. In Portugal, the equivalent is primeiros. Some other words may be used depending on the region. In Quebec, the equivalent for dibs would be shotgun. Shotgun, often shortened to shot, is also used in other parts of Canada for calling front passenger seat in a car, only while being in sight of the vehicle. In Romania, the equivalent is stop pe rozu, which means stop on red. In Russian-speaking countries, the equivalent is th megawatt florin n euro th 1/4 th 3/4 n, which means mind you it's mine, or more recently th degree th plus or minus thn th 3/4. In Spain, the equivalent for dibs is primer, or primero, or mi pido x mi lo pido. In Sweden, the equivalent for dibs is pax, which means peace in Latin, although et vara, and et fien, which basically means I call first to be, and I call first to have, are also commonly used. Conversely, one may dib oneself out of a chore not yet assigned by saying eta int jag. This continues with chvayena int jag until there is only one person remaining, to whom the chore is then assigned. Tjing is used in some places, and the American shotgun, and dibs are also used. In Switzerland, the equivalent is the phrase chopf, bei, bowed beer 1/4 art, which means touched head, legs and floor. An alternative to this expression would be xklopsla paragraph ssli, in English analogous the key has been put into the lock. In Turkey, there is no exact term, but the equivalent is the phrase o benim hakim, which means that's my property. An alternative to this expression would be captim, in English I got it. You can also use benim meaning mine. In the United Kingdom, Ireland and New Zealand, bags, tax, or bagsie euro, or variants including Bagsie, and Bagsie euro is used for the same effect. Bagsie is most commonly used by children. Historically, dibs has been used through much of the UK. Bagsie, or bags, started out as bagsie, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, which started giving school-related examples since 1866. Similarly, bag or bags can be used informally as a verb, meaning claim in a phrase like I'll bag the best seats. This is related to the expression to bag, meaning to put something in a bag. In Venezuela, the equivalent for dibs is mano, or lo tengo, which means mine, or gotcha respectively, but if you want someone to share what you have with you, you have to use the colloquial expression my timity, which would mean something like share with me. The latter comes from a shorthand of mitad y mitad, which means half and half, implying that something be equally shared. In Zambia, the equivalent for dibs is donkey, which means I choose that, and involves pointing to something you lay claim to. See also, riding shotgun, references. External links, the dictionary definition of dibs at Wiktionary.